A powerful businessman tried to seize sacred native lands through corruption and intimidation, threatening to destroy a community's heritage. Michael Connors's ruthless campaign showed no respect for justice or tradition, fueling outrage. But when Thomas Harris, a lone ranger with a fierce sense of honor, was unexpectedly drawn into the fight, everything changed. Just wait until you hear how this unlikely alliance sparked a battle that ended with justice triumphing over greed and deceit. Thomas Harris was no stranger to solitude. As a seasoned ranger, he had spent years navigating the rugged terrain of the Colorado mountains, living close to nature and far from the noise of civilization. The wide, open spaces around his remote ranch offered him something he'd been searching for, a refuge from a life marked by hardship. After serving his country in the military and enduring the heartache of a painful divorce, Thomas had chosen this quiet existence to heal and find peace. The summer sun cast long shadows across the valley as Thomas finished his morning chores. The scent of pine and earth filled the air, the peaceful silence only broken by the distant calls of birds. It was a routine day, one like many others, until he noticed a figure appearing down the dusty trail that wound through the trees. A man approached, his steps measured and deliberate. His dark eyes held a calm that seemed to echo the timeless wisdom of the land itself. Thomas recognized him as Joseph Yamana, a respected member of the nearby native tribe. Joseph's presence was familiar, but something about the way he moved made Thomas instinctively alert. Instead of the usual nod or greeting, Joseph's voice was quiet but firm. "You will have to lift me," he said. Thomas's heart skipped. He blinked, staring at the man who stood before him, not frail or weak, but dignified, carrying the weight of his heritage in every line of his face. It was clear Joseph was injured. His leg hung at an unnatural angle, betraying the severity of the pain he must have been enduring silently. Without hesitation, Thomas moved forward, wrapping his arms beneath Joseph's shoulders and legs. As he lifted him carefully onto his back, Thomas felt a surge of confusion. Normally, an injured man would want to be carried to the safety of his own tepee, nestled within the heart of the tribe's land. But Joseph's gaze was fixed on the distant horizon, his head turned away from the familiar path. Instead, Joseph directed Thomas toward the road leading to the white settlers' homes, the very place Thomas had always considered separate from the tribe's world. The shock hit Thomas like a cold wind. Why was Joseph asking for help in this way? Why was he leading Thomas into a place where tensions had long simmered beneath polite facades? That moment marked the beginning of an unforeseen journey, one that would challenge everything Thomas believed about justice, loyalty, and courage. Thomas Harris was a man who valued fairness above all else. His years as a ranger and soldier had taught him the importance of standing up for what was right, even when it wasn't easy. But as he listened to Joseph's story, confusion twisted into something darker, a simmering anger that began to grow beneath his calm exterior. Why had Joseph deceived him? Why had the proud man whose people Thomas had come to respect asked for his help only to lead him not to the safety of the tribe's lands but straight toward the ranch next door? the home of Michael Connors. Michael was no ordinary neighbor. A wealthy businessman with far-reaching influence, Michael had long been a thorn in Thomas's side. Their disputes over water rights, land boundaries, and preservation efforts had been frequent and bitter. Thomas had always suspected Michael of pushing his luck, exploiting loopholes, but he never imagined the extent of his ambition. Joseph's voice was steady but urgent as he revealed the truth. Michael Connors was preparing to launch a massive logging operation deep in the heart of the tribe's sacred lands. It wasn't just a business venture, it was an act of aggression, one built on forged documents and backed by corrupt officials who had been quietly bribed to look the other way. Thomas felt a cold weight settle in his chest. The injustice was clear, and the betrayal ran deep. Here was a man who would stop at nothing to seize what wasn't his, trampling the rights and heritage of an entire people for profit. And Thomas had unwittingly been pulled into the middle of it. He looked at Joseph, no longer just a visitor in need of help, but a messenger carrying a warning, heavy with consequences. This was not simply about land. It was about a struggle for survival, dignity, and truth. Hatred ignited in Thomas's heart, not blind rage, but a burning resolve born from witnessing cruelty and corruption firsthand. The man who had sought peace in the mountains now found himself drawn into a fight he couldn't ignore. With every passing day, the injustice gnawed at him, fueling a fire that demanded action. This was the moment Thomas understood. He would stand with Joseph and the tribe, even if it meant standing against powerful enemies. Thomas Harris's shock and confusion had long faded. What remained was a fierce anger, not the kind born of blind rage, but a sharp, focused fire that fueled his every action. This was no longer about personal peace or quiet survival. It was a fight for justice, for the truth that had been buried beneath greed and corruption. Determined to stand with Joseph and his tribe, Thomas threw himself into the task. They began gathering evidence, painstakingly documenting the illegal logging that was already scarring the sacred lands. Photographs of heavy machinery tearing through ancient trees, testimonies from tribe members whose voices trembled with both fear and hope, and statements from local farmers and longtime residents who had watched the land change with growing unease. Thomas tapped into old networks, friends from his military days, seasoned journalists hungry to expose corruption, and legal advocates who understood the stakes. Together, they worked quietly but relentlessly, preparing to shine a light on the darkness that Michael Connors and his allies tried so hard to hide. But Michael was a man used to getting his way, wielding power like a weapon. He wouldn't back down without a fight. The warnings came quickly and with chilling clarity. A threatening phone call in the dead of night, a burned patch on the edge of Thomas's barn, smoke still curling from charred wood the morning after. Even the local police seemed reluctant to follow leads. Their reports delayed and investigations stalled. A subtle but clear sign that Michael's influence had reached farther than Thomas imagined. Despite these attacks, the anger inside Thomas only deepened. This wasn't merely a battle over land or money.
It was a struggle for honor, the right of Joseph's people to protect their home, their history, and their culture from being erased. Every attempt to intimidate only strengthened Thomas's resolve. He knew this fight would be long and hard, but turning away was no longer an option. He would stand firm side by side with Joseph until the truth was heard.
After months of relentless struggle, a wave of hope finally broke through the dark clouds hanging over the land. Thomas Harris, Joseph Yamana, and a growing circle of activists had fought tirelessly, piecing together a powerful case that could no longer be ignored. The evidence was undeniable. Photographs capturing the devastation, heartfelt testimonies from the tribe and local witnesses, and documented proof of corruption and illegal logging. The day of the hearing in the state court arrived like a long-awaited dawn. Inside the courtroom, silence hung thick as the facts were laid bare. The judge, moved by the overwhelming truth and the undeniable connection between the tribe and their sacred lands, ruled decisively. The logging operation was to be halted immediately, and the tribe's rights to the territory were formally recognized and protected. Michael Connors, the man who had wielded power like a weapon, was forced to step back. His campaign to erase the tribe's heritage was crushed not by violence or threats, but by truth and justice. The court's decision also brought consequences for his corrupt dealings, a clear message that no one was above the law. Later, standing side by side at the foot of the towering Colorado mountains, Thomas watched as the tribe gathered in quiet celebration. Faces once shadowed by fear now shone with relief and renewed strength. Joseph turned to him, his eyes bright with gratitude. "You lifted me," Joseph said, a warm smile breaking across his face. "But not just on your shoulders. You lifted us all." In that moment, Thomas felt a deep, quiet satisfaction settle in his chest. What began as a simple act of kindness had grown into something far greater, a beacon of respect, fairness, and solidarity that stood firmly against injustice. For the first time in years, Thomas sensed a new beginning. One where understanding and honor would guide the way forward, leaving behind the shadows of hatred and deceit. Justice had prevailed, and with it, hope.